This is Get Savvy, the podcast for people who want to claim back their time through the power of delegation, productivity, and automation. Welcome to this episode of the Get Savvy podcast. I have Kathryn with me today, a special guest who was on last season, absolutely raving about custom GPTs and ChatGPT. And as you may have seen the title of this episode, we are talking about why we ditched ChatGPT. So we've basically moved entirely over to Claude at this point. So naturally, Kathryn, my first question is, what happened?
Yeah, I was a daily ChatGPT user. I loved it. I'd built out all of the custom GPTs for the brand, like I talked about last time. And I was so invested in the tool. It was a huge part of my workflow. But over time, I really started noticing that the results, even within those custom GPTs, were starting to feel a little bit same. Like I was spending a lot more time editing the results that it gave me. And at the same time, there was a lot of noise online about Claude. I had Claude recommended to me, so I thought, all right, I'll give it a go and I'll see what it's like. And honestly, since switching, I don't really see myself going back. And I think from chats with you, you feel the same way.
Yeah, definitely. At the moment, we're looking at transitioning everyone on the team to using Claude. And at this stage, not looking at going back, but obviously things do keep evolving pretty rapidly. But yeah, I'm personally loving Claude at the moment. And in this episode, I just want to be clear for you listening, before we get into it, we're specifically in this episode talking about Claude as a chat interface, not about Claude Code or Claude Cowork, like I mentioned a couple of episodes ago. But this wasn't one big moment. It was kind of like a slow build of frustrations. And I think you felt the same, Kathryn. We both just started noticing these little things day to day. And just a note as well that these are just things that we experience. They might not be universal, but this is what we personally were seeing.
Yeah, even with those custom GPTs, like I mentioned, there started to be a lot of sameness in the outputs, and that AI voice is super recognizable now. Beyond even content drafting, which is what I was using the GPTs for a lot, the results with ChatGPT were just really inconsistent across the board. So for example, when we were using ChatGPT to summarize a really large document, we picked up that Chat was basically ignoring most of the second half of the document. It just couldn't read something that was that big, but it also didn't tell us that it couldn't read something that big. Yeah, we only noticed because we were checking it, which we absolutely should be doing anyway. But that's a huge risk in business.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're using it to help you. And when it's just ignoring half of a document, then obviously that's not helpful at all. And we also found that anything that required long context or deeper thinking, ChatGPT just seemed to struggle. Like we had to actually constantly remind it to stay on track and bring it back to the points that we had mentioned originally.
And there were also times that the instructions or the help that ChatGPT was giving us just felt really convoluted. For example, I went to it to help troubleshoot an automation that I was setting up. I just couldn't get it to work quite right. So I asked ChatGPT for advice, and it very confidently gave us an answer that was just completely wrong. It led me around in circles for hours, and obviously that costs a lot of time.
Yeah, this is that AI hallucinations that we've talked about before in previous episode, where it just confidently tells you something that's just not true at all. And to be fair, Claude does that too. All of the different AIs do that to some degree, but for us, we've noticed with Claude that it is less, and Claude seems to be more likely to actually tell you when it's unsure rather than just bluffing through it like ChatGPT does and kind of throws you for a loop and then ends up being like, oh, sorry, you're right. That actually was never going to work in the first place.
I hate that. I hate when it says that. It's the worst.
Just, you've wasted all your time and then it's just like, you know what, you're right.
Yeah.
So I think the turning point was when you realize that you're spending more time actually editing the output of the AI than what it would actually take to do yourself. And it's not that process that you go through with delegation where it's, you do have that time up front, but it was actually just an on repeat thing. So we realized something wasn't working. And then, like you said, Kathryn, there was a lot of chatter online about Claude and Anthropic. And a lot of it was around Claude code for developers, which is not us. But there was also a lot of people saying that the general functionality was just better with Claude.
And I definitely found that. Even from my very first impressions when I started using Claude, the writing quality just immediately felt way more natural, more human, and definitely less of that really obvious AI generated voice. It also actually listened to my instructions and followed them, which was a nice change. And it could pick up an idea with a lot less context than I would have to give to ChatGPT and still deliver better results.
And it could then also hold on to that context across a much longer conversation without going off track and forgetting it, like we were talking about before, and reading and understanding those much larger documents that we've also referenced earlier.
Yeah, there was definitely less hand-holding with Claude right from the very start, and we didn't have to continually keep correcting it, like you said. So it also, something that I noticed is it just felt a lot more neutral as well. It wasn't agreeing blindly with everything we said. It would push back on ideas, and the tone of voice when talking to us was just less cheesy, less showy than ChatGPT is, which really had started to grate on my nerves a little bit, if I'm honest, with ChatGPT over time.
Yeah, I feel like ChatGPT has just become a huge yes man. And I mean, that's great to a point, I guess, if you want to be validated, but most of us are not using ChatGPT just to validate the way that we're already thinking or feeling. So yeah, that's not very helpful. Another thing with Claude is that it also has a feature called artifacts, where it creates actual formatted documents like a Word document, spreadsheets, even interactive things right inside the chat. So instead of just giving you a wall of text back as a response to then copy and paste into your own document, it can even like reflect a template that you've given it. I mean, ChatGPT can also create you a Word document or an Excel document, but we've found that the output of the documents that Claude actually gives us with that feature seem to be a lot better than ChatGPT. So overall, we've just felt a lot more confident in those outputs. And so, yeah, the switch feels like a no-brainer to us.
Absolutely. And to give some more context as to what this actually looks like in practice, the very first thing I did was a side-by-side test because, there's a lot of chat online about Claude and there's a lot of chat about a lot of AI tools online. So you have to approach them with a bit of a healthy dose of skepticism. So I had ChatGPT open, I had Claude open, I gave them the exact same prompt, the same context, and immediately Claude's outputs were better, closer to our brand voice, much more natural and neutral, and with less editing required as well.
I know I've used it for this, and I think you have as well. We've used Claude for automation troubleshooting as well when we're building an automation. And if we get stuck or trying to set something up, we were then trying to get ChatGPT to help us, but it just kept giving us incorrect answers. And like we were talking about before, it would do the thing where it would just give you a bunch of information, tell you to do this, that, and the next thing. And then as you're doing it, you're realizing this isn't going to work. And you tell ChatGPT, and then it tells you you're right, or if you do keep following those instructions, it ends up realizing itself that that's never going to work. It was just sending us around in circles for like sometimes over an hour, whereas Claude fixed those same things almost immediately.
Yeah, I had this for an automation that I was building. Again, chat was sending me round and round in circles. It was giving me the, oh, sorry, you're right, every time I pushed back on it. And I took it over to Claude and it wrote me just this really, took 5 minutes to figure this out with Claude. It wrote me a block of code to insert into my automation that made it work instantly. Whereas ChatGPT was trying to find little workarounds and was telling me about integrations that weren't even real. It took 5 minutes to troubleshoot that with Claude.
Yeah, I find that it especially with the platform that we use, it tells you to add things that just, don't even exist. And I was having to remind ChatGPT constantly, remember, I'm using the most up-to-date version as well. And it would be like, oh, yeah, you're right. That doesn't exist.
Well annoying. And then obviously for me, being in the marketing role, content and marketing tasks were a huge one for me to test out. Claude's outputs, again, needed way less editing. They still needed editing, as with any AI output. You shouldn't just be copying and pasting directly and putting it out online. But yeah, Claude didn't have that cheesy AI tone to start with. Even though I'd given ChatGPT our full brand guidelines in those custom GPTs that I'd set up, that AI tone would still creep in. It was still taking me a lot more time to edit. And not so much with Claude.
Yeah. And with a Claude project setup, which we'll talk about in just a second, it basically gives the same functionality as a GPT, but on a much bigger scale. So this is probably one of the biggest upgrades. Claude projects are essentially replacing what custom GPTs were trying to do, but better.
Yeah, definitely a lot better at this stage. So a project is like a folder or a set workspace inside Claude. You can upload documents. So for example, for marketing, I would upload our brand guide, our tone of voice, our ideal client info, and it will remember all of these things across every conversation within that folder, that project. So you're not having to re-explain yourself every time you start a new chat, and you can have multiple chats within that one project, which is a huge advantage and perfect for ongoing projects as well. And the other big thing is, compared to a custom GPT, where you have around 8,000 characters to write your instructions, that sounds like a lot. But when you're creating a complex GPT, 8,000 characters is almost nothing. Like, you really don't have the space to be writing in-depth instructions. With Claude projects, you can write significantly more. And a lot of people are saying that it's basically an unlimited amount of characters. I saw someone online yesterday that said they had instructions in a project that was over 300,000 characters and still going. They hadn't hit the limit. So the level of context you can give in Claude is next level compared to ChatGPT.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And if you are like us and you have created custom GPTs, then that work isn't wasted. We just transferred that thinking, that brand context, and everything we had told ChatGPT. We put that straight into Claude, with way fewer limitations. So if you only take one thing from this episode, then setting up a project in Claude is the biggest upgrade between ChatGPT and Claude at the moment. But, not all of them, they're not perfect. So what do we actually miss about ChatGPT? I mean, probably not a lot at this stage, but for a lot of people, that main thing that I keep coming back to, and I referenced it a couple of episodes ago, will be the image generation, because Claude doesn't do that. It can create diagrams and visuals, but not actual images. But again, that's going to depend on you individually whether that is a big deal to you. For me, for us, it wasn't.
Yeah, I can't think of many things that I miss about ChatGPT, to be honest. It was actually a pretty easy switch. Like you said, we just copied a lot of our existing content over. What I would say is that what took a bit of adjusting to was the setup side of things. So going back to talking about projects, setting those up are slightly more technical than setting up a custom GPT in ChatGPT. So you need to invest a little bit more time up front, which again, I mentioned that in the last episode I was in. You have to be willing to invest that time in order to get a good output from AI, no matter what tool it is. And also, just to be transparent, I do still sometimes use both ChatGPT and Claude. I'll run the same prompt through both tools to compare. I think it's important to keep a finger on the pulse of both of them because they are updated so regularly. There may be a day that ChatGPT is better than Claude again, but at this stage, not. But still worth comparing from time to time. They give different outputs. Occasionally, I'll land somewhere in the middle between the two outputs, but yeah, definitely favoring Claude.
Yeah, I would agree. And if you've been seeing things about Claude online, you might have seen that it is more technical. So if you're listening to this and thinking about switching, then no, you don't need to be technical or know how to code or be a developer. If you can use ChatGPT, you can use Claude. But from the get-go, we think you will notice better outputs. But yeah, you do need to invest some time into that setup, like you said, if you want the best results, because it's crap in, crap out. So yeah, set it up as best you can from the beginning.
Yeah, and you could even get ChatGPT to summarize some of the chats you were having with it and take those over to Claude as a new prompt. Makes things a little bit easier. In terms of cost as well, the Pro plan of Claude, which gives you more tokens, you can chat back and forth with it more. The Pro plan is about $20 a month, so that's basically the same as ChatGPT Plus. So you can think of it just as a swap, not as an extra cost if you're switching directly over to Claude. And the free version is really capable as well if you want to test that out first. You just don't have access to some of the deeper thinking models within Claude, and also you'll have limits to how many messages you can send back and forth.
So if you're using AI, or if AI feels fine but not great for you at the moment, then it might not be you. It might actually be the tool this time if you're doing all the right prompting and all the rest of it. A lot of people will be blaming themselves that they're not prompting right. But yeah, sometimes it is just that the tool isn't performing and not doing what you need it to. So yeah, like you've just suggested, and I mentioned a couple of episodes ago, try the free version first. Test it with your actual work, do some comparisons, see if the output is better, and then go from there. Obviously, you need to be your own judge at the end of the day as well. And if you would like some help implementing AI or automation into your business, then we would love it to have a chat with you. You can book a call with us over at strictlysavvy.co.nz. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the Get Savvy podcast.